Hey folks, my friend Alain Merville had requested, him and I were having a conversation and he asked me, how long does it take to program this stuff like Chordie and whatnot? So I'm going to do something that nobody shows on YouTube. There's a lot of like teaching videos of like how to, do general programming concepts, but nobody actually shows real world, hey, I'm going to implement this feature today. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm anticipating this is only going to take about 20 minutes. Usually the rule with programming is whatever you estimate something is going to take, plan on it taking, it's actually going to take 3 times that long. So I'm going to estimate this is going to take me 5 minutes to implement. So that gives me, roughly it's going to take 15 minutes. All right. So what we are implementing, well, first let me just show you the state of the application as it is. I'm doing a rewrite. I've finally learned how to use source control and whatnot, so I've just been kind of doing everything over from scratch and whatnot. So let me show you where we're at. Okay, I'm just going to run this real quick. Now, I have a lot of menus that work. One menu that does not work is the MIDI input menu. As you see down here, it says to do MIDI input menu. So, also it's not showing any chord names or anything. So this is what we're going to implement, the MIDI input menu. Now, what do we want the MIDI input menu to do? We want it to show, the available MIDI instruments and also the selected instrument. And we also want to have the option selected instrument we're using for MIDI input. We also want to have the option of choosing of receiving, I can't spell, receiving MIDI input from all devices. Okay, all right, so these are our goals for this menu option. So first thing we need to do is figure out where our, just how does this whole menu system work. So the way the menu bar works is when you click on a menu item, it calls this, well, first when the application opens and you say you have a menu bar object, that object looks for all the menu bar names, and that's where this get menu bar names is. So the way I have that stuff set up is over here in get menu bar names. I've got this string array of menu names, and I just add items from this map right here. So that's the way this works. Menu, title, IDs, options. These are all of right over here. My menu bar, these are my title IDs. These are just like the options that go with it. So the way this works is I have a menu title ID called options, and then over here I have, when I do menu bar names.at, and I put in this key options, it returns this string of text. And you'll notice when I run this application, you'll notice that my menu bar names, options, key, spelling mode, MIDI input, font, that corresponds with this list here, and that corresponds with this here. Now, it's easy enough for me to change the order by just reordering the way that these are added. So like, let's say I wanted my MIDI input menu to be first. So I'll just put that as the first thing that gets added, and if I rerun it, you will see that MIDI input is the first item. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong title. That's the wrong order actually. Okay, so we'll put that the other way. We'll put that back. So you'll notice that didn't show me a MIDI input menu. That showed me a MIDI options menu. So that brings me to the next thing. If we do, the next thing that happens when you actually click on the menu is this method right here, get menu for index, gets called. And that is over here, get menu for index. So now the way these are kind of separated is via an enum. Now with enums, an enum is kind of just a way to give integers a name. So behind the scenes, what this is doing is saying options equals 0. Key equals 1. Spelling mode equals to, etc., etc. So when you click on when you click on a menu item, it calls this function and it provides the value of the menu. So when I clicked on the first menu item here, that's menu item 0. So when it says case menu title IDs options, options is 0. So it's going to show all of these things. All right. So now for us, another way we could have done this is we could have done instead of doing a switch top level menu index based on this int, we could have done if, you know, if this had a parameter name, if menu name. So we can do something like if menu name equals menu bar equals this. If the menu name that was selected equals this string right here, then do all of this stuff. That's another way that this could have been written. All right. So this is just a little bit of a backstory about how this stuff works, okay? And then the final thing is when you actually click on a menu item, this is the item that gets called. So these are the 3 things we need to keep in mind, okay? All right, so let's go to, we're looking for MIDI input, so we are going to look for where the case of our switch statement is menu title ID's MIDI input. All right, that's down here, and it says to do MIDI input menu. All right, okay, so this is what we're going to implement right here. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to add all of the available MIDI devices. We can see down here here's a list of some of the available devices on my computer. All right, so let's see how can we get that. Now, the way we can grab those is to there's a class called MIDI input. All right, and then there's a static method called get devices. All right, and this returns, if we look at this, returns a list of available MIDI devices. You can open one of these devices by passing its index into open device method. All right, so we're going to do auto MIDI devices equals. The reason I'm using the auto keyword is because I don't really care what this returns, even though it returns a string array. So actually, just to be thorough, I'll just type that. Okay, string array equals MIDI devices. All right, now for each item in the string array, we're going to add it to the menu. So you'll notice that's kind of what we did here. You know, for each item in this map, we're going to create the item, and then we're going to add that item to the menu. All right. So let's do that. All right. So for int I equals 0. I is less than, this should be lowercase. MIDI devices dot size. Increment to the next I after you're done using I. All right, so let's just debug. Let's just see if we can get this to print out the names of the devices. All right, so debug MIDI device name, and we're going to add MIDI devices. The name, remember it's an array, so we can use our array syntax to access MIDI devices item number I. All right, let's see what that does. So we should see every time we click on the MIDI input menu, we're going to see MIDI device name and then the names. It's all going to appear down here. All right. Sure enough, there it is. These are all of our MIDI devices. All right, cool. That works as expected. All right, now we know that MIDI devices this is the name of our menu item. Okay, so we need to make a menu item that uses that value as the text that gets displayed. Okay, so MIDI. Let's see, menu dot add item. All right. What are these going to be called? Let's see. Okay. First thing we're going to do is we're going to use this method, add item, which just asks for the item ID number. and the name. All right, so we know the name is going to be MIDI devices I. All right. Oops, syntax is stupid right there. Okay. Now the result ID, we don't know what that's going to be yet. So first we'll just figure that out. We'll just say it's going to be like 1,000. All right. So MIDI int MIDI device ID equals 1,000. All right. We'll address what that should be in a minute. Now, just to clarify, this MIDI device ID, what we want to make sure is that when we do menu item selected, we want to make sure that whatever number we choose here is not associated with any other item. Now you'll notice that this enum has, this menu ID's enum has use single menu equals 1, this is 2, set node on color is 3, set sustain color is 4, set mouse over color is 5, enable sustain, etc., etc. If we look at the actual menu item selected method, that's down here, you'll see you've got, if our top level menu is the options menu, then we can say if our menu item ID is use single window, again, that's this guy right here, then you're going to do this. All right. If it's set sustain color, then you'll do this. All right. Cool. That's the way that works. Okay. So we'll go back to where we were. We'll go to this. All right. So we don't know what these are going to be numbered yet, because we're not going to do it with an enum. We're going to do it a different way. But first thing we want to do is, you'll notice that all of these items are going to have the same number, so they're not going to do anything. Now, if I go back to menu item selected, I'm looking for a case of switch our top level menu index where the case is MIDI input. All right, let's find that. Okay, MIDI input is to do. All right, so whenever we click on an item in the MIDI input, it's going to just print this debug statement to the console down here. All right. Now I'll do debug item ID number just to show this. Okay, and we'll just do what is that called? Menu item ID is the value. All right. Okay. String menu item ID. All right. And for every item we click, it should say MIDI input menu selected, item ID number 1,000. All right, let's make sure that is actually what happens. Probably, yeah, okay. All right, here we go. So if we click on this, we get our, oops. All right, let me click on one of these. We'll do euphonics, MIDI port 3. All right, MIDI input item selected. Okay, item ID number that 1,000. Okay, great. So what we can do now is give ourselves a constant. We'll do const int MIDI device ID equals 1,000. All right, so now we get rid of this. And now here we can do MIDI device ID, all right, plus I. All right, so now for each device, the first device is going to be 1,000 plus 0. The next device in the list, let me go back to it. All right, the first item in the list, if you just look at the math that's going on here, the first item in the list is going to be 1,000 plus 0. Second ID in the list is going to be 1,000 plus 1, etc., etc. Okay, so let's make sure that that prints correctly. All right, we'll recompile, rerun. All right. Now if I click on IAC bus driver, IAC driver bus 1, you see ID number is 1,000, okay, as expected. This should be ID number 1001. All right, cool, it's as expected. All right, great. So now we can figure out how to actually do something with that information, all right? So we go down here, MIDI input menu, all right? Now what we need to do is we need to take that number and associate it with a particular device. So let's grab our string array. I can just copy the same code. Copy this. Okay, these are all of our MIDI devices, and we know that the first item in the list is going to be item 1000. So we need to subtract to find out which actual item in the MIDI array was used. We need to actually subtract 1000 from that number. So we need to go debug chosen MIDI input, all right, plus MIDI devices. We need to do menu item ID minus our MIDI device ID. All right, now this is going to give us like a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3. All right, and this is actually going to give us the name of it. All right, remember, nothing's actually being selected, nothing's actually being checked. We're just kind of like slowly building up our functionality. All right, let's try this. All right, so MIDI input, if I select this, it should say down here, Euphonics MIDI Euphonics port 1, all right? And awesome, there it does. Let's try it on another one. Virus TI synths, very cool. All right, awesome. So now that we're able to actually pull the name, what we can do with this information is actually turn it on and turn it off, okay? So we can get rid of this. This is code we don't need. We don't care about this code. All right. Now, we can turn this on directly by doing MIDI input. What options do we have? Open. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong thing to do. Like I said, if you plan on a feature taking X amount of time, it's going to take 3 or 4 times as long. All right, so now what I've done in Chordie is where MIDI input stuff actually gets turned on is this class over here called MIDI receiver. I've got this function called enable all MIDI inputs. And what it does is first it pulls all the devices from the available from this function that provides them to us. And for each device, it turns that device on, and then it adds this function as a MIDI callback. Okay, so what we can do is we're going to call this method. Actually, we're going to call this method enable MIDI input. And what we're going to do is the way this is going to work is when you click on the menu item. Is this still running? Yeah. When you click on this menu item, it's going to call this function, and this function is going to pass this value to. It's going to call that. It's going to pass menu item ID minus MIDI device ID to this function right here, enable MIDI input. Okay? All right, so we go back here. Now, does the menu bar have an instance of the MIDI receiver class? Because that's important. And if it doesn't have an instance of it, it's not going to be able to talk to it. All right, so where can it get one from? Does our main Chordie window have a MIDI receiver? Our main Chordie window has a MIDI receiver. All right, so if we go back to our menu bar, there's a reference to the owner. All right, so we can add a method to Chordie components class that will provide us this particular MIDI receiver. All right, do I have that already? I do not have that already. All right, so let's add that. Okay, so MIDI receiver reference, get MIDI receiver, return MIDI receiver. See where I can't type. Okay, all right, save that. So now if we go to our menu bar, in order to call that function that I was talking about over here in menu bar, over here in MIDI receiver, enable MIDI input. Lucky for us, all this stuff is public, meaning that outside functions can call it. All this stuff here is private, meaning internal, meaning it can only be used by the MIDI receiver class. Outside stuff cannot call it. Okay, so over here in this method, what we can do is we can do owner.get MIDI receiver. Okay, now we can call some of the methods that are on the MIDI receiver class. We can do disable, enable. Okay, so when you choose something, we want to do disable all MIDI inputs. We want to turn off all MIDI inputs. And now we want to do owner.get MIDI receiver, enable a singular MIDI input, menu item ID minus MIDI device ID. All right, that's going to turn on a single MIDI input, meaning that MIDI input from other devices is not going to work. So let me see. Just to kind of show that this actually works, if I go to, is this where this, where's the, okay, here's the handle incoming callback. All right. So if I do debug MIDI message arrived plus message dot get description, that's what we want. This is going to be the description plus give me a space, plus give me the source's name. Give me the name of whoever sent it. All right. Okay. Now, just to show what happens, all right, I'm going to recompile this. I'm going to play a couple notes on the keyboard. We're going to see it appear here. It's going to say who it's from. All right, I'm going to just play regular C. Is this transmitting? Okay, there we go. All right, so like I said, MIDI message arrived. This is the MIDI message arrived. Here's the device that it came from. I have my EWI next to me. If I turn it on, yeah, okay. My EWI is plugged into this USB 2.0 MIDI device. This is a bunch of pitch wheel stuff that arrived. All right. Okay, so that's just to show proof of concept that it works. Now, if I go to here, and we want to test out this functionality. Remember we said if, well, first let me get MIDI monitor. All right. Okay. I have to restart my virus. Hold on a second. Just to show that this is transmitting MIDI. This has been on for like 4 days straight. That's why it's not working. Okay. All right. Now we're getting signal from our virus. Okay. And we're also getting signal from, let's turn this on so everybody shows up. Here's from the from our USB guy that the EWI is plugged into. All right, so we want to show that this is working as expected. All right, so let me run Chordie. Keep the MIDI monitor open. Let me clear this. Now, let's see. If I set, right now Chordie is receiving it from everything, which you can see down here in the debug menu. Okay. Now, if I set this MIDI input to the virus, or I'm sorry, not the virus, to the USB MIDI port, it's only going to take MIDI from my EWI. Okay. So now, if I push notes here, you can see stuff shows up here, and then if I move stuff on the EWI information is detected by Chordie, but the virus information is not detected. All right, so now we know that it works correctly. So the next thing we want to do is we want a check mark appearing here that shows which device is currently selected. All right, so let's implement that. All right, we can get rid of this. We know that works. All right, we go back to our menu bar. Actually, our MIDI receiver is the one who controls which MIDI input is currently selected. So that's going to be an integer. So int selected MIDI device equals 0. When it's 0, that means all devices are selected. Okay. So now if we do enable MIDI input, we want our selected MIDI device to equal whatever value was sent to us. At the same time, we want to be able to see what selected device was given to us. All right, so const int get selected MIDI device. Oops, excuse me. Return selected MIDI device. Oops. Now, why do we care about that? Well, in our menu class, if we go to our get menu for index, okay, we go back down to where we have our to-do MIDI input. How do we know which device is already chosen? Just to kind of show what I'm talking about, we're going to add an item called all. All right. All right, so here we go. We go menu.add item. Item result ID is going to be MIDI device, okay? And the string is going to be all MIDI inputs. All right, now what's going to happen, and you'll notice that there's a bug already right here. The first item that gets added here, this value is 0, I is 0, so MIDI device, remember MIDI device is 1,000. So 1,000 plus 0 is 1,000. That means that, let me go back to this list. That means that IAC bus driver is going to have a menu ID of 1,000, but we have a menu ID here called all MIDI inputs that's already set to 1,000. So this needs to be plus 1. Okay? But that also means that our menu item selected down here is off by 1. Okay? So menu item ID is 1 higher than the actual thing right here. So we need to do minus 1. All right. Minus 1. Now this is actually going to cause a crash because if our menu ID is 1,000 and our MIDI device is 1,000 and we subtract 1 from that, okay, so 1,000 minus 1,000 is 0, and then negative 1 is an invalid index into this array, so that's going to cause a problem. So what we need to do is what we need to do is we need to add a check for if menu item ID equals MIDI device ID. Okay, if it equals this, we know that we chose, jumping around is tough. We know that we chose the all MIDI inputs menu command, all right? So this is the condition. If our menu ID equals that, we chose all MIDI inputs. We chose all MIDI inputs, okay? Otherwise, we chose a single MIDI device. All right, so since we chose all MIDI inputs, we can do owner.getMIDIReceiver.enable all MIDI inputs. Now for enable all MIDI inputs, we have to set, with all MIDI inputs, you remember that we set our selected MIDI device to some number, okay? So we want this to be set back to 0. Remember, 0 means, when it's 0, that means all devices were selected. Okay. All right, so enable all MIDI inputs. Selected MIDI device equals 0. All right. Okay. Making a little bit of sense. All right, so if we did that, we enable our inputs. Okay, then we're done here. Return. All right. So now, otherwise, do this other stuff. Okay. Okay, here's our menu item, add menu item. Here's the ID we're going to use, and here's the title. Now, there's another add item command that will actually give us our check marks and our enable and whatnot. Okay, so menu.add item, that's this right here. Okay. I'm just going to walk through the parameters. Okay, so the first one is our item result ID. This is this command this value or this value. All right, so we'll just do this one. MIDI device ID, all MIDI inputs. All right, now if it's enabled, okay, we want this to always be enabled. All right, now how can we tell if it's ticked? We can tell if it's ticked if, well, remember this value is 1000, sorry, it's MIDI device ID plus 0. Okay, so we can say that if, we can tell that that is ticked if owner.get MIDI receiver.get selected MIDI device equals 0, then it's ticked. Okay, that's how we can tell. So this is the conditional. We can do this, and we can just put that right there like that. There's no icon to use, and that's an optional parameter, so we can do that. All right, semicolon to close it off. All right, let's see if that's let's see if that works. Remember, the program starts with all MIDI inputs enabled. All right, and sure enough, all MIDI inputs enabled. Okay, cool. There are 2 entries though. But that's because we have an add item here, and we have another add item that actually checks it. All right, so we can get rid of this guy. And I think it would be nice if there was like a separator, so we'll do menu.add separator. Like that. All right, let's see how that looks. All right, cool. All right, awesome. So now we need to do this. All right, so we're going to replace this menu.add item with something similar to this, okay? Menu.add item. We want this one. Okay. All right. There's no icon, so we don't care about that. Now, semicolon, because there's no icon. We don't need a comma for that parameter. All right, so our result ID is going to be this thing. All right, and our name is going to be this thing. All right, and it's always going to be, this menu item is always going to be enabled. Okay, and so we just need to figure out this is ticked. All right, so how can we express whether or not the chosen device, how can we express that our virus TI synth is our chosen device? Well, we know that the way we choose our device down here is by doing this value, all right? That's how we, this equation right here, menu item ID minus MIDI device ID minus 1 is what gets past this function, and that value is set to here. So we can do if selected MIDI device equals that equation, then we know that this particular device was checked. All right, I'll show what that looks like, okay? Okay, so we get owner.get MIDI receiver .get selected MIDI device equals this equation right here. Is that right? No, that's not right. I'm sorry. Equals, actually if it equals I plus 1. This is how we know if it's our chosen device. All right, let's take a look at that. I believe that's correct. Oh, we have an extra line of code right there. All right, let's rerun it. Okay, so if I set this to virus, and we go back to this guy, all right, stuff comes in from the virus. Oh, I'm sorry, we need to, just to test this out, we need to go back to our MIDI receiver. I want that debug joint in here again. Where did that go? Where's my handle? MIDI receiver handle incoming. I wish I hadn't commented that out. All right, so debug, we'll just type this in again. Incoming MIDI message plus message.get description plus a space plus source get name. All right. Okay. Go back to where we were. Oops. Okay. So pull this guy up. Put this over here. All right. So again, notes coming in from our virus and notes coming in from our USB MIDI port. Now, if I set this to virus, okay, we still get stuff coming in on the virus, and if I do stuff on the iwi, we shouldn't see anything appear here. That's how we know this works. Okay, cool, that works. And we'll also, if we go here, we will see a check mark next to the virus TI synth item. All right, cool. So actually this is one off. So if I set this on IAC bus, if I set this on USB port, I move the iwi. Okay, iwi's showing stuff coming in. We're not seeing stuff coming in from the virus. So maybe. Okay, so there's a little bug right there. That's something that we need to figure out. So does that mean this should be I plus 0 or I minus 1? Let's think about this for a minute. Okay, so get selected MIDI device is going to return either, it's going to return 0. Okay, it's get selected MIDI device is going to return 0 when it's set to all MIDI inputs. It's going to return 1 when it's set to this. It's going to return 2 when it's set to that, etc., etc. Okay, so this needs to be I minus 1. I believe so. I can get rid of that too. Oops. All right, let's try that again. Okay, one more time. Now you notice we have 2 check marks, which is very weird. Okay, yeah, why do we have 2 check marks there? And that's because this logic right here is incorrect. All right, so we need to add some comments. All right. If get selected MIDI device returns 0, then all MIDI inputs was selected. Otherwise, let's see. Remember, I is 0, so that means this is going to be 1,000 plus 1. Okay, so we want to know if, what does this return? Take me there to that. What am I looking for? I'm looking for this. Enable this guy. Okay, so this is going to be set to, let's see. We're trying to figure out the value that's being passed here. What is it? Are we setting it to 0? Are we, like, if we select that first item, if we select IAC driver bus 1, and so according to this list of devices here, that's a 0. So what we actually need to do is say that that's input plus 1. All right, that should solve that bug. That was kind of tricky to figure out. That means this should still be I plus 1. Okay, all right, so it's the virus. Just you. Notes coming in from the virus, not from the iwi. Virus is selected. Virus MIDI is not selected if I set this to USB port. Okay. Nothing coming in from the virus, but we do get information here, and we'll notice that that's selected properly. All right, let's put that back on all MIDI inputs, okay? Notes from the virus, notes from the iwi. All right, awesome. That feature is successfully implemented. Let's get rid of this comment. Let's get rid of this to-do message. Okay, let's go back up. Let's get out of manual mode. We'll go back to our menu bar. Our MIDI input is done. Okay. All right, so there you go. We wanted to show the available instruments. Oops, let me run this. Okay, so we did everything we settled on. We said we wanted to show available MIDI instruments, which it currently does. We wanted to show which instrument is currently selected. Why is that there? So that's super weird. Why do we have all MIDI inputs showing up under spelling mode? Let's go look at the get menu for index. Oh, it's because spelling mode does not have a break statement after it. If we go back and look at this, you'll notice that spelling mode has the whole MIDI input menu after it. All right, let's quit that. That's because this case was missing a break statement. All right. That means this case is also missing a break statement. All right. Run it again just to make sure that that bug is fixed. All right, custom menu's gone. Here's all our menu stuff. And we know that our MIDI input menu works correctly. So awesome. All right. Now, something that we could do just to kind of expand on it, I'm not going to do it in this video because I'm not sure how to do it, is to have a timer, have some kind of timer that just constantly checks to make sure that all of these MIDI devices are still available. And if they disappear, you need to, either set this is enabled flag right here to false, so that way it shows up as grayed out. I'll just show what that looks like real quick. Set that to false. Okay, these are all grayed out. That's what that does. So we have some kind of system that, once a second it queries the operating system and says, hey, are these MIDI devices still available? If they are, cool. If they're not, close everything, reopen all MIDI inputs in case the user wants to, do whatever. All right. Anyway, you get the idea. I don't know how long this took. It definitely took longer than our anticipated 5 minutes. I'm guessing this is probably closer to 20 or 30 minutes. Anyway, that's a real world usage. That's a real world just showing, if you want to be a programmer, what kind of stuff do you actually work on, and how do you go about solving problems in like in an effective way and get stuff working, and how do you fix all the bugs and not get dissuaded. So I'm sure you notice that there's just a ton of stuff to keep track of and whatnot. The more code you write, the easier it becomes to keep track of all the different little systems. Like for me to remember that the fact that this MIDI receiver class is where all of our MIDI input is being handled and whatnot. The only reason I know that it's there is because I wrote it. I wrote every line here, so I remember how every line works. All right. We'll comment this out instead of in case I need it for some other reason, in case I ever need that debug message. I don't have to type it again if I just leave it in there as a comment. All right, I hope that was super informative. I hope that you got something out of it. Yeah. All right. If you have any programming questions or whatnot, hit me up. This is using C++ and using the JUICE framework, J-U-C-E. Anyway, that'll be that. I hope you dug it. Like, subscribe. Definitely a change of pace. I'm just kind of giving an inside view into what it takes to program an app like Chordie or whatever, and how to just get stuff working that is currently not implemented. Hey, thanks for checking that out. If you made it this far, you're the real MVP, because that was way longer than I expected it to be. Again, thanks for checking that out. That was like a real world look at, what kind of stuff gets accomplished while you're programming, and what kind of problems you end up having to solve, and yeah, just, the monotonous tasks that you kind of have to deal with when you're programming, but in the end, what kind of, feature sets it provides for your users and whatnot. I hope you dug that. Be sure to like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching this far. That was 45 minutes. I did not expect that to take that long. I thought it was going to take 5. Usually expecting it to actually be, 15 or 20, and it turned out to be almost triple that. Anyway, thanks for checking that out. Peace.